of material bodies, why swing over to talking about existence? And assuming you've been following all through Middle Ages, you can see immediately that the medieval conception of God is of one whose essence is to exist. You see. So then, if it is the case that God is one for whom his essence is indeed his existence, his essence is to exist, he is the very essence of existence, not just the existence of another form, another essence, but the very essence of existence, then there is a parallel between the necessary truths about material bodies that we know in geometry and the necessary truth of God's existence. Existence is to the concept of God as adding up to two right angles is the concept of the three angles of a triangle. You see? Granted the concept of a triangle, it is a necessary truth. The contradiction would be self-contradictory. And granted the concept of God, the contradiction of his existence would be self-contradictory. Now you see, that's what he's after. And so what he develops in this fifth meditation is an ontological argument for the existence of God. An argument just from the idea. Now, look, if you will, then, at page 51. Page 51, where he puts it this way, very top of the first column. When I think of it more attentively, it appears that the existence can no more be separated from the essence of God than the idea of a mountain from that of a valley, or the equality of three angles to two right angles from the essence of a triangle. So that it's not less impossible to conceive a God, that is, a being supremely perfect to whom existence is a wanting, or who is devoid of a certain perfection, than to conceive a mountain without a valley. That latter is impossible. So is the conception of a God, a perfect being who does not exist. Now, you catch echoes of Anselm, you see? Anselm, with his view that God is the highest of all beings, therefore does exist. But there's an interesting point that he makes here in the second column of 51. It must be alleged as an objection, nor must it be alleged as an objection, that it's necessary to admit that God exists after having supposed him to possess all perfections, since existence is one of them. But my original supposition was not necessary. No, that doesn't follow. The objection just doesn't hold. His point is that existence is not just one more perfection. It is the very essence of the divine being. And if his essence is to exist, then God would not be God otherwise. And so, accordingly, the idea of a perfect being. Now, the logical form of the argument, I think, is pretty plain. He's arguing that either God exists or God does not exist. That is to say, either A or non-A. Okay? He argues that non-A is a self-contradictory position, therefore false, so A is necessarily true. Okay. The self-contradiction is in saying that one whose essence is to exist can not exist. You cannot conceive of a non-existent being whose essence is to exist. If you conceive the essence, he necessarily exists. Well, that caps off what Descartes' wanting to do concerning the relationship of God to human thought, so that he has this final paragraph in Meditation 5. I clearly see the certitude and truth of all science, that's all theoretical thought, depends on the knowledge alone of the true God, inasmuch as before I knew him I could have no perfect knowledge of any other thing. But now that I know him, and I possess the means of acquiring perfect knowledge, as well relative to God as to other intellectual objects, as to corporeal nature, insofar as it's the object of pure mathematics. The existence of God, a perfect being who would not deceive, gives confidence in necessary truths, in logically necessary truths. So what is logically necessary, not only about God, but about material bodies, can be accepted without doubt. And that's Meditation 5. Comments? Yeah. Yeah, Kristen.
Is it a logical argument against Descartes to say, well, you could say that, I can say the words that the right angle or the angles of a triangle add up to 150 degrees. But
How many?
150 degrees. That doesn't make the statement true.
Right, right.
So couldn't you say the same thing about God? You can come up with a definition, but that doesn't...
But you see, the geometry doesn't work at 150 degrees.
Right. But you can still make that statement. So...
Oh, yeah, but he's not talking about a statement, is he? Isn't he talking about a concept? The concept of a triangle. Now, analyze the concept of a triangle geometrically, which means logically.
Okay.
You see? So there's a logical necessity about a triangle that it be a triangle. And a triangle whose angles only add up to 150 degrees wouldn't be a triangle. You see? What you would have in that case would be not something like that, but something like, well, I'm not quite sure what. I wanted to put it like that, but something or other that wouldn't work. But no, I guess it would have to be, let's see, something like that. They never meet. I didn't draw those quite parallel, but they would never meet, or something like that. So, no, that geometry wouldn't work. You see, just the reasoning as to the nature of a triangle wouldn't allow that. If you start with the concept of a triangle in three-dimensional space, that's where you come out. Now, could you develop a non-Euclidean geometry in which 150 degrees? I don't know, I hesitate there. I defer to any math majors. I think what you would be doing would be redefining degrees.
Well, if you follow what Kristen is saying, someone could hold a concept of a triangle that was incorrect to the, someone could hold...
No, they wouldn't be holding a concept of a triangle. They would be supposing something that is false about triangles.
Well, then how does Descartes know that he's not supposing something that's false about God?
Good question, and that's where I thought you were going, Kristen.
Yeah.
Maybe you were. All right, now supposing you say that about God, namely, the essence of God. God is one whose essence is to be good, beautiful, powerful, but not a necessary being. Not a logically necessary being. You see, supposing you say that, what would Descartes respond? That's not God. You see, that's not God. Why not? Well, you see, this may be where Descartes' dependency on the medieval philosophical scheme is something he never escaped. Why does the one who is perfectly good have to be necessarily existence? And in the medieval context, it's because at the top of the hierarchy of being, you have the greatest degree of being. And so by definition, the perfectly good is the necessary existent, you see. Now, in which case, Descartes' argument is an argument that's system-dependent, if his concept of God is part of that medieval conceptual scheme. Yeah. So that it wouldn't follow of necessity.
Has he drawn two metaphysics, one the hierarchy of being and the other one cause and effect?
Not in this meditation. I don't think he's dealing with cause-effect issues here. His cause-effect argument for the existence of God is in Meditation 3.
That's what I meant the overall, in all.
Oh, yeah. Well, if what you're saying is that this is a different argument from the Meditation 3 one, very definitely, yes. The Meditation 3 is a cause-effect argument. This is not. This is not.
Is his argument in any way superior or any different to Anselm's argument?
Yeah, I prefer Anselm's because I can see more clearly in terms of the hierarchy of being how the argument could be claimed to work in that particular philosophical framework. Yet there's something about Descartes which is a much simpler thing, you see. If he can make it stick that this concept of a necessary being, you see, is there. The objection to it today perhaps highlights the problem. You find the contemporary objection that the existence of God is not logically necessary. Now, it's argued that God is ontologically necessary, that is to say that granted that God exists, he cannot not exist. You see, granted God exists, his existence is a necessary existence, it's not contingent on anything. You see. But to say that God is, it's logically necessary that God exists, that's tougher. And so some would argue that what he's doing is